What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Yield Today with Dallin, Candland. I'm joined with Galt, and we'll just have him introduce himself real fast.
Yeah, Dallin, thank you so much for having me on. I'm really excited about what you're doing. I help entrepreneurs and employees and freelancers and side hustlers and CEOs create an abundant and sustainable 4-day workweek lifestyle. I help them basically create the life they want and enjoy life and work and play and relationships and make an impact. And I so love what you're doing. I so love that you're starting early with what you're doing. So thank you so much for having me on the show.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm super excited to talk with you more. So I was kind of looking at your profile and saw that it took you about 5 years out of college to start a business, and you had these struggles, and it made me feel better because I was like, yeah, it's okay if everything crashes and burns when you try it the first time. It's important you just try.
Absolutely, yeah. So I actually ended up being about 7 years that I had worked inside a corporation, very good corporation. And I'd always had my idea of starting my own business. And first I thought I was going to start a business within that corporation. They have entrepreneurial opportunities or semi-entrepreneurial like franchise type opportunities. And then I decided I wanted to start my own deal. And I had saved a lot of money. I had lived with my parents probably more than they would have liked, and maybe at times more than I would have liked. Saved up a bunch of money and had this plan, did some studying, took some courses on a specific type of investing, charitable investing. This was right around 2000. And the stock market was doing awesome. The internet stocks were doing awesome. And people had all this extra money they wanted to give charitably. So I learned all this thing. Well, long story short, the stock market took a really bad hit in the beginning of 2000. And a lot of these people that had this extra money, there's a trickle down thing where my plan A, which I had actually prepared for, done the work, and really as best as I knew how to, prepared for, invested a good 10, 20,000 and whatnot. In a matter of 5, 6 months, just did not work out. And a lot of the money I'd saved was gone. And it was one of those things that was very trying. Entrepreneurs have had things in some way that don't work out. I'm not saying you aim for that. You don't have to aim for the failures, they'll come at you. But that was something that then had me realize, okay, well, I've got to figure out what do I do next? And it was coaching that I started to do next. And that isn't even what worked out. As I was doing some coaching with a couple clients and really trying hard to stir up business with previous clients I'd worked with in this corporation, then one person said, well, hey, there's this software I have that isn't helping me. It's not helping me as well as I'd like. Is there something you could do that would do a little better? And long story short, out of a sort of one comment from one client that I really wasn't even aiming for, I ended up creating a software, and for the last 20 years, that's paid over 80% of my bills. So it was just something that was not exactly what I intended, and yet my focus was on helping and serving those clients in a way that I believed in. And so I guess for me, sometimes the best laid plans is kind of an interesting concept, because it doesn't always go the way you plan, at least in my experience.
That's really good. I think, sometimes it's all about those rebounds and how you put it back up and how you try again. It's really important that you learn from those shots that you take. I love basketball, so I can talk about basketball. It's like you take a shot and it's like maybe it came off wrong, or you regard it, or how long did you take before you rose for the jump shot? And there's all these different things you learn, but if you never take the shot, you can never learn anything. So that's really good. You were able to get started, and then that one comment drove your thought process into let's create something else off of this, and then that ended up becoming the thing that drove most of your growth and profits after that point.
Yeah, and I have this guy. The quote actually comes from Wayne Gretzky. I'm a volleyball player, but the same thing. You'll always miss 100% of the shots you don't take. And to your point about the rebounding night, so I coach my son in basketball and my daughter, and a rebound, put back, gets you 2 points. A layup gets you 2 points. A dunk gets you 2 points. So they're all valuable. And I think for certain, if a person thinks things are going to work out the first time, that'd be kind of like assuming you're going to make one sales call and make a sale, or assuming you're going to date one person and now you're going to find the person you're going to marry, or you're going to practice once and you're going to be the greatest at your craft. It just doesn't seem to happen that way. Maybe sounds like it'd be awesome, but it doesn't seem to work that way for most people I've met.
Yeah, for sure. And definitely like real quick with the dating thing. Like I've gone on some days and sometimes you just aren't feeling it. So you just like have to find a way to make it really clear your honesty and everything. And there's this one girl I dated a little bit in August. I got here early before the semester started. I met her and she needed a friend and we've stayed friends even though we haven't continued dating. And but you know, it's kind of a feeling it out. I think all those previous not so good experiences with dating or not being enough communication, not having enough communication on my end has helped me to have that much better friendship relationship with her. So I think, yeah, right on the head.
Absolutely. Unfortunately, dating expenses are not tax deductible. My friends always used to joke about that. We wish that would
I
be a
wish
thing.
that'd be so funny.
Yeah, and then we got into conversations about how, well, when you know it's going bad, then do you kind of pull back on your financial investments, which I guess is kind of like business too. So interesting. There's a lot of parallels between dating and business that actually are. We'll stick with the appropriate ones here, but yes. So sometimes you got to make sure that when things aren't. But it doesn't. To your point, it doesn't have to be all or nothing. You can still have. There's plenty of people that will. You've probably experienced this already. People that have asked, let's say, to be on my podcast, and in a way it's my podcast, but I'm looking to serve my audience. So the way I see it is it's my audience's podcast, and all of the best podcasters that I've studied under have said, hey, if you're not sure and you're being that nice guy, well, gosh, I really want to give this person an opportunity. The question is, does your audience want this episode? Does your audience want this perspective? If they don't, well, then you're not helping your audience. And maybe find another way to be nice to that person or introduce them to somebody or just see how you can help them. But definitely there's this balance in the business side that very much you want there to be value created the same way if people are listening right now, that they're looking for something specific for you. So again, I encourage you and really, I just think it's so awesome that you're starting so early doing this. So kudos on that, man.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it's been a fun journey so far, and this episode's being released in January of 2021, and we're getting it done before 2020 ends, and it's definitely been quite a journey, and I've really seen lately how the beginning and there's some like cool experiences that happen, like those are a really good indicator of how it can go long term. It can continue to grow and everything, and I'm really glad that I've stuck with it because there's definitely some points, especially in the beginning, where little drops or little things happen or having to record in my room and it doesn't work so well because roommates come in and out and you're just like, this is impossible. But it's not impossible. I mean, you just try new things. You rent a room on campus or something and there's a way to make it happen.
Absolutely. I had just recently, I've done what? I'm on my 70 something episode, and I've got another, let's say, 10 that I've recorded. And I have heard people talk about the nightmare. If you're a podcast interviewer or a YouTube interviewer, the sort of typical nightmare is you interview somebody, it's somebody that was hard for you to get on the show, and it just doesn't come out. Technology issue, whatever. And I'd heard people talk about that. And so I've been so like, okay, I'm never gonna let that happen. And I just had it happen a couple of weeks ago.
Oh,
And it
wow.
was one of those things where, and I reached back out to the person. So again, it wasn't perfect. And fortunately, this person was also professional and realized because the interview was really good. And I happen to believe everything happens for a reason. So I just took it as, hey, maybe there's something else I'm supposed to, interview this person on. And as it turns out, we're going to interview 3 months from now instead of now. So again, I don't know all the reasons why, but to your point, I know what I'm committed to. And I think that's the hardest part. It's definitely the hardest part for me. I'm an athlete. I'm used to feedback.
Mm-hmm.
So in athletics, like you said, you shoot a basketball, the ball either goes in or out. It's instant feedback. You either get the rebound or the steal or whatever, whatever it might be. And so there's this feedback loop in, let's say, basketball or hockey or soccer or tennis or whatever, where the ball goes in. And even if the person is hating on you or talking smack, the ball went in though. So you know that you did something right. On the other hand, when you look at doing a podcast, doing a show, writing a book, creating your work, doing something that you find valuable, views are kind of an interesting way to say, yes, that measures things, but views don't necessarily measure quality. Certainly you can be Instagram famous or you can prop up your Instagram account, and that doesn't necessarily mean that what you're doing is real. So I think it's very difficult to realize what it is that creates results over the long run. But the best thing that I found is there's been three things in my life that I've really put my best effort into. And one is being the best dad I can. The other is being the best husband I can. And the third, probably maybe not as important, but maybe, is being the best beach volleyball player I can. And all three of those didn't happen overnight. And I know a lot of people will talk about, well, doing the work you love, and that is great. And I try as best as I can to do that. But the work you love won't always make you money. And the work that makes you money won't always be the work that you love. And so the way I've just looked at it is, okay, what can I give? How can I deliver on a consistent basis and help people, and come from that space knowing that chances are over the years, the actual specific work that I do is going to change. And certainly, I'm 49, you're much younger than I am. My guess is going to change even more rapidly for your generation. But again, your reputation does follow you. I have relationships from 20 years ago of people that I've just started doing business with. And so again, I think the part, and I hear Gary Vee say this a lot, and he's, in a lot of ways, Gary Vaynerchuk, he's, fine-tuned his message, I think, of really just sticking with that, stick with the fundamentals. Not everybody's supposed to be an entrepreneur. Not everybody's supposed to be a movie star. Not everybody's supposed to, all these different visions of what it's supposed to be like. Just being yourself, doing your thing. And then you find the people that want to do business with you. And I've not had a huge Instagram or Facebook or LinkedIn following. I've been an entrepreneur 20 years and don't work on Fridays, and I'm at the beach playing volleyball. So it doesn't have to be this one way that's put out there. It can be a lot of different ways, but if you do the fundamentals, you do the reps like you're doing, you're going to get somewhere.
Yeah, I completely agree. And kind of going along with your point of how you can't be everything for everybody, I think it's easy to just kind of fall into that, like, oh, I have to do public speaking, or I have to do live streaming, or I have to do these things. No, that's what's worked for some people. What works best for you may be, coaching calls or something like that. Tell us a little bit more about how you kind of came into learning, hey, I enjoy being a coach, I enjoy being a podcast host. How did you kind of come into those things?
Sure. So my father is an entrepreneur / athlete. My mother was a ballet dancer, involved in shows, theater, and she's also into spirituality and psychology. So I'm the child in between the two, studied a little bit of everything. So I very much wanted to, at one point, thought I wanted to be a teacher, specifically in a school setting. At different times, I thought I wanted to be a psychologist. I did end up, I have a bachelor's in marketing. I have a master's in mental health counseling psychology. Thought I wanted to do that. And I like helping people grow. So I was very in tune with that. In my case, I got my master's degree. And during that time, I thought I was going to take my time and sort of work my way up income-wise, at least where I'm in Florida. I would have had to take a pay cut after getting a master's to move from the business field to the psychology field. And at that time, it just so happened that I met my now wife at that time. And I realized, well, gosh, I want to be this provider. I can't go from making, what I'm making now to making literally like 50 or 60% of it. I just can't do that. So it changed the situation as far as how I did it, but it also brought me into a sense of, well, people can be helped at all areas. I don't need to go to India. I don't need to go to Africa to help people. I can help people where I am. And for me, it's been very much about just helping a person look at what is that big frustration. What's that thing that they really want help with? And in some cases, I can help them with that. And if it's that situation, usually I have different online courses and different things. And the online courses and the podcast are a way to help people without me having to invest time. And what it does is it allows me to say, look, I've taught this once, I've recorded it once, and many of the courses I have, I give away. And it allows me then to reach a lot of people. I want to have a big impact, but at the same time, I need to pay my bills. So when it comes to those people that say, okay, wait, I want deeper help, or I don't want just the course, I want you to help me through this. Okay, well, that's coaching, and that's a different pricing point than, let's say, an online course. And then repeat coaching or a very specific issue. But in general, what it has come down to, there's been kind of two approaches. With my software, it was a very simple thing. I have a payroll-based sort of software that rewards team members in a small business if they perform at high levels. And so the equation for price point or how to figure that out was, entrepreneurs, a group of them saying, wait, we just need something that'll do our payroll for us and reward our team members and keep them motivated. And it's costing us at least 4 hours a month. And so I did, okay, 4 hours a month times 12 months, that's 48 hours. Let's see. And I knew their business model, it cost you at least $25 an hour to have a team member sitting in their chair. It doesn't mean they're paying the team member 25 an hour, but they're, cost the chair, the overhead, the whatnot. Okay, so that's costing you $1,200 a year. Plus, if they were motivated, they'd sell more. So it's just kind of this, okay, maybe that's costing, let's say, a couple thousand a year. Okay, great. So price point somewhere between 500 or 1,000 or whatever. And that was very simple. Whereas on the coaching side, it's more of, if you're in the business side, it can be as simple as, okay, well, what's the problem you're having? Well, the problem I'm having is I have a lot of staff turnover. Okay, so your team members aren't staying very long. Okay, well, tell me about that. Well, every time I hire a person, it takes me 3 months to figure out if they're going to stay. And usually it's more like, actually, let's go to the normal. It's 6 months. It takes me 6 months to see if they're going to stay. Okay, and how much are they normally going to make? Well, that position pays, let's say that position pays $30,000 a year. Okay, so which is roughly about $15 an hour. If you do 2,000 hours, is kind of an average. So, okay, so that person, it's going to, after 6 months, after $15,000, you figure out if they're the right person. Okay. How many of those people stay? Well, about 1 out of 3 of them. Okay. So it's taken you in a year and a half, 45,000 to figure out if one person's staying, what's happening while that's going on. Oh, well, the work's not being done properly. Someone else is having to cover them. So it's costing me more. Oh yeah, and then by the way, there's the overhead of that position, not just their salary. So, wow, that's a big deal. So for example, staff turnover, that's a big issue. So anything I have, whether it's helping you design a compensation plan that keeps people to stay with you longer and perform at high levels, whether it's recruiting processes, whether it's training team members to be happy in their job, this is how some of these sort of fuzzier concepts can make more sense. Because if I say to you, we're installing a ping pong table in the office, you say, okay, great way, that's an expense. I don't see how that helps. But if that keeps kids happy, now in and of itself, that's maybe not the best example. But if I have a program where all sorts of programs, if we educate the people that work with us more and help them grow their career, if we have a company podcast and we teach podcast, there's all these different things. So once we can do that, now I can talk to, okay, so you've got this $50,000 or this $25,000 problem. If I can help you with that, well, a coaching call that's $250 isn't that big of a deal now, is it? Or a series of coaching calls that cost, let's say, $2,500 and addresses that solution. So you're still kind of selling the coaching calls because some people still want to get their brain around, okay, how much is it per call? But at the end of the day, if I could give you something that would make you $100,000, and I said to you, well, Dallin, would you like the 12-week program or would you like me to tell you in 30 seconds? You'd say, wait, I'd want it in 30 seconds. You want the result. Well, okay, then great. If I can get you that result, it's the result I'm charging for. It's not my time. But that takes a while. You have to know your people and help them do that. But for example, in your case, you're doing something that so many people are not doing. You're taking the initiative to do podcasting. And that's something that even though there are some of the best coaches out there that teach podcasting or interviewing or live streaming or video interviewing or vlogging, at the end of the day, there's very different perspectives. It's very different doing a podcast or a video podcast in person. It's very different doing it if you're coming from a starting out standpoint versus you're an established brand that has a $20 million income in gross sales. So there's so many different pieces. And so, for example, if you can help people that are around your age or in your stage, beginning podcasters or people who are looking to learn, there's so much that can be done and there's so much you can do. And so for me, the coaching has been just this evolution of what is it that you need. And very often I can't help them. And that's where my network on LinkedIn, or that's where my network of people I've interviewed in my podcast or people I've just met over the years. And as you said, maintaining good relationships, then getting business to them and saying, oh, here's the person that's the best person for you. And in that sense, I guess it depends on what your financial wants and needs are, but I'm in a pretty good position overall. I'm not making 7 figures. I'm not making $500,000 a year, but I know it's important to me financially and I can help take care of my family. And so that works.
That's awesome. And it's kind of this virtuous cycle too. If you get somebody that you've built this relationship with that would connect really well with this person that has this problem that you cannot solve, they remember you. And it really helps. And it's just this really natural feedback loop, kind of going back to that. I really like what you said just about enjoying it, even if you're not making like a ton of money, you're having a ton of fun. I'd rather have a ton of fun than make a ton of money personally and help a ton of people. And if you can do that, then that's perfect. Kind of what the thought that's on my mind is, maybe for somebody that's on the edge and about to jump into the pool, but there's something holding them back, whether for starting a business, starting a podcast, any of those things, what would be your tips for them if you could talk to those people right now?
Okay, so now I'm going to go into old person mode because this is relevant. So when I was your age, when I tried to leave the corporation that I had, actually I wasn't trying to leave them. I had a good job, and I'm going to oversimplify the numbers to make the math simple. But basically, I was making around $50,000 a year, working 5 days a week. And I simply said, hey, can I work 4 days a week and make 40,000? Even though technically I was still doing about 32, 33 hours. I had my job, getting good results, more than good results. And the end, because I wanted the free time. At that time, I was single, didn't have to worry about family, raising a family, that sort of stuff. And the short answer was, Wade, we know you could probably do it, but we're a large corporation. That's going to take a lot of changes. Some people aren't going to like it. It's too big of a shift. So sorry, we can't do that. And what's different today, especially when you look at what's going on right now with so many small businesses trying to figure out how to, and this is happening right now. There are small business owners trying to figure out how to survive COVID without losing their best team members. So a lot of people don't realize this right now. Is they think, oh, the owner just wants to let go of people. No, remember we just talked about a few minutes ago. Finding good people is very difficult, and keeping them is even more difficult. So for me, a lot of this is about, you can do this in baby steps. When I started, you kind of had to get a second job somewhere else. There was internet. Internet was just starting. I was in the dial-up era. So there was no video conferences, none of these different things. So you literally had to go find, we called it moonlighting, a second job, usually by the moonlight at night, and you'd go somewhere else. Whereas you can start a side business, a side hustle, if you want to call it that, in an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours a week. Gosh, I think what you're doing again is so great, because it might take you 5 to 7 years. If you listen to Gary Vaynerchuk, Brendan Burchard, Pat Flynn, any of some of the top people in the industry, it took them years to get traction. And they'll tell you, look, my first year, 2 years, 3 years on YouTube or my podcast, it was horrible. It wasn't great. I just started doing things. The lighting was this, like I can see all these flaws, but I started. And you're connecting with people, and you're learning, and you're building a network. And so from that standpoint, I would say so you can have sanity, make a commitment. First, start out with 1 hour a week and do that for a month. And then see if you can go up to 2 hours a week, whatever it is. But whatever it is, stick to that commitment. It's kind of like working out where you say, okay, I'm doing this hour no matter what. I'm gonna do something of value. And then you reach, so first it's maybe that researching stage. And then you reach that stage where you say, okay, now I'm gonna start producing something like you are. I'm gonna produce some sort of content. It's not gonna be perfect. It'll never be perfect. Nobody cares, by the way. It really is not. It's like my mom says, look, not everybody's looking at you when you walk in the party. They're really not that concerned. I mean, if you've got something obvious going on, fine. But for the most part, everybody's in their own little insecure world, figuring out their things, and everybody's kind of worried about their own stuff. So if you just come in and you do your thing, and you decide, I'm going to produce 1 episode per month, forget even the once a week when you start out, 1 a month. And I'm going to do that. I'm going to start learning. And as I get more proficient at it, because again, I'm giving myself a time commitment, it can be done that way. Now, you can go at it a lot faster, but if you want to enjoy the ride, if you are gradually doing it, and at the same time, if you realize that you don't need a whole lot of money and abundance financially to be happy. And if there's a whole different level of depth to this. There's a book called Factfulness, which is written by a gentleman by the name of Hans Rosling. And it talks about the financial situation of the world and trends and all these, a lot of different mega trends that are very, very relevant as far as what's going on in the world, but he mentions it and shows what people live like at different income levels. For example, he has on the book, it has pictures of, what housing looks like in first or in third world countries versus, so these different ideas. And one of the things that still sticks with me from that book is that 6 out of 7 people on the planet make less than $32 per day.
Holy cow.
And see, I grew up in the United States. I was born in Canada, but I grew up in the U.S. I've grown up in a very abundant situation. It sounds like you're probably in a similar situation. You're in college in the United States. Just that alone, and again, this is not to say you should feel grateful. Hopefully you do, but it's not a shaming thing. It's to say, okay, if you're waiting to hit some higher level of income to get happy, it's not that. At least is my experience. And it doesn't mean you have to give away all your money and that's going to make you happy either. Because I know plenty of poor people who are miserable. It's not that. The money is not the thing. And I'd rather have a lot of money and be happy than not have a lot of money and be happy. But in all of that, to your point, I'm not going to lose the center of what's most important to me, my family, enjoying life. And so if you can do that, it's basically the sooner you start your work. And the best analogy I can give you again is to being in shape. And so most people get that to say, look, if you really look at some people that are, and again, you're younger, so at your age, maybe some people it's easier to not do as much work and be in shape. But if you look at people in their 40s and 50s and even 60s that are in shape, they didn't get that in a 1-week program or a 6-pack ab. It's a habit. Just like people that constantly have a smile on their face, people that are happy, that's a habit. They're used to seeing what's good in life. And so that's just one of those things where if you're going to start something, why not start now? And here, let me take all the pressure off it. You don't have to make money at it. You don't have to have people like you for it, but you do have to get started. So this guy, I wrote this like 20 years ago.
Oh, wow.
And it took me 7 years to put it in paperback because I had all these ideas about what it needed to look like, and I'm going to wait. And part of it too is back then you had to drop about $2,500 to $3,000 just to even get a certain number of printed. Today you can get one at a time printed. So the technology is so there. But the same thing with my podcast. I waited 7 years. I need to stop doing that 7-year thing. I heard about podcasting, even bought a course and waited 7 years and then started. And again, because I had all these ideas because right now I know, okay, there's that shadow. See that shadow? I'm so aware that there's a shadow back there. And if I had a bigger budget, Dallin, there wouldn't be a shadow there. And I'd have this thing going. Dude, nobody cares. And especially if you're listening to this, you're like, what's he even talking about? You're not even seeing it. Bottom line, I'm as presentable as I'm going to get. I'm here and I'm doing the work, and you are too. And so I think that's a lot of what it is. There's no mystery to it. Be willing to do the work and start doing the work.
Yeah, I think that's really important, is just making the most of that practice time and learning while you're practicing. There's a really cool quote that we used in my basketball days. Well, this one kid had this shirt that kind of gave me the perspective that had this quote on. It just said, it's not about the hours you put in, it's about what you put in the hours. So if you are putting all of your time into research and you never put any of that to work, that doesn't help. I've recently looked at all of these email lists I'm subscribed to. I'm like, wait a second, that's not relevant to me right now. Like, I'll probably make a course, but not right now. And all these other things, it's like, this is just bogging down my mind. So there's no point. So I unsubscribed from like probably 10 in the last couple days. I'm probably going to subscribe from as many as I can so I can, give myself that space so I can focus more on that thing. I think that's really important, so you just get started, because where you start right now is not even going to compare if you're consistent and you keep learning and keep growing. So yeah, I appreciate that. And hopefully somebody has gotten a piece of paper out and is like, okay, this is what I'm going to do right after I'm done listening to this episode. So yeah, thank you for giving us that breakdown and that thought process.
Yeah. And the thing is look, you just got to be doing something, and you got to be doing your thing. If you're not doing your thing, look, I can try to be Tony Robbins. I can try to be one of these people, but people say, oh yeah, he's trying to be Tony Robbins. It's not working. I need to be giving, and this is also what I happen to believe is how we're wired. I think we all have a unique gift, and I'm not the only one to ever say this. We have a unique gift that the world needs, and so this is me doing my best to share it. And so if I'm trying too hard to be like somebody else, again, well, going back to our data analogy, he's trying to be like no, I'm waiting. And once you start realizing that the people who are meant to be around you and work with you and be friends with you and do business with you, you're going to find them the most quickly when you're simply you, the best version of you, the happiest version of you. Not always the hardest working, the balanced version of you, but certainly there's something in there. And whether it's that you go to, let's say, udemy.com and you decide, I'm going to first take one course and make sure you get one of the $10 courses on building a course. And I like it. Phil Ebner has a course out there that's really good. And there's a lot of other ones, but his is one that's a good course and it's $10, not $200. It's more about if you're going to take action and then decide that you're going to create a Udemy course, even if it's a free course. I've got a lot of my courses are free. I just want to help people and reach people, and I'm learning how to create better courses. If you want to do a podcast, take a podcast course on Udemy, or get some of the information that's on the internet that not so much free. Usually you're going to want a course, at least for the $10 or whatever, on something like Udemy is going to be worth it, simply because it'll give you some structure as opposed to you trying to have to pull stuff together from out of nowhere. But get involved in things. So for example, a lot of people, I have an online community where I'm looking to help people, and get involved with helping other people and or joining their stuff, experiencing it. But to your point, be very ready in 3 days, 5 days. If it's not what you're looking for, unsubscribe. I used to feel really bad unsubscribing to people like, oh, this person gave me value. Like, no, I need to be the best person I can be. And if I've got what I need to get, maybe I'll contribute to their thing or not. And certainly when it's a technology thing, I know they're not, it's not keeping them up at night to have an extra autoresponder email go out to me. But overall, if I can be learning, and certainly if you look for the people who are some of the people that you want to do work with, see what you can learn from them. So for example, there's an event called Podfest, and it's a event on podcasting and whatnot, and awesome event. And I attended it for the first time last year in 2019, really liked it. Thought, hey, gosh, I'd like to be a speaker at this sometime, and I'd like to help sometime. In fact, I'd like to put on an event like this sometime. And so I'm 49, and I said, well, you know what? Hey, the guy's name's Chris. Do you need somebody to help with any of the, the moderating of the events? So we just did a virtual version of it back in October, August, and they needed help with it. So I was like, okay, great, I'll be a moderator. And I didn't get paid anything for it, at least financially, but I learned a lot. Of course, I made connections. And so that was, for me, that at 49, taking an unpaid internship to learn what's actually going on behind the scenes and learning how things are done. And of course, I've made some great contributions. Then what do you know? Then I got asked to help put together the productivity part of the conference. And then I got to speak. And then I just spoke at a next part of it called VidFest, which is about video creation. So a lot of this is just getting involved and legitimately just looking to serve, because and this is not said to be pessimistic, but there's a lot of people that are looking for, hey, Dallin, I just did something for you. What are you giving me right back? That's the way a lot of people are doing it. And technically, that's kind of the premise of business. I give you $1, you give me something that's worth $1 in my mind. But the long-term relationships as an entrepreneur building a business, they're built on longer relationships than that. No different than friendships are, no different than anything else. You don't be friends with somebody and say, hey, can I borrow $50? Hopefully you don't have to borrow the $50, but usually, you do something that builds a relationship. And so I think if you're doing that, it's actually not that different. And so much of what's being taught, especially if it's from that sort of trading energy, or if it feels high pressure or any course that you see that is high pressure, buy today, scarcity, urgency, run the other way, because that's not how business over the long run works. It's not scarcity. It's not urgency. If the course is really good, I promise you, they'll deliver it again. So when they say, oh, we're not ever delivering this again. Yeah, that's what iPhones do, right? Apple made a bunch of money. They said, we're never making it. Of course they did. It works. We're going to do it again. So any of those things just let you know this person, chances are, is more of a newbie, or a newbie in their mindset, or at the very least, they just haven't understood it yet, that it's a very scarcity based version of the world, if you will. Like either you have to win or I have to win, Dallin, versus we can all win. And again, if you're sitting in the chair that you or I are sitting in, and we think that the world is a scarce place, my question would be, how much more evidence do we need around us? And without going too much into faith or this or that, I happen to believe there's a God. I can't prove it, but God's been pretty good to me. So if in the overall things, it's worked for me to say, hey, how can I be the best person? I can't prove it. And this is by no means trying to be soapbox or that I'm some great guy. I have a lot of faults. But at the end of the day, if I'm looking around saying, what else can I get? How else can the world help me? There's a lot of people doing that. Whereas if I can look for what's that thing I can give, and yes, I still have a very clear idea. I'm not forgetting my math. I know what my bills cost, and so I keep those in mind. But at the same time, I don't have to go right to that because also it feels very desperate. No different than dating.
Yeah, if you continuously just want a return on investment immediately, it can just be so just grimy for you and for everyone. It just results in this poor taste in your mouth kind of experience. That's kind of what I've felt recently lately. So not like I've tried to do anything really big. I tried streaming on Twitch with like video games, and you're trading your time for potentially subscribers and stuff down the road if you become an affiliate. And it was just like I was grinding and putting in like 30 hours a week of streaming roughly while doing school. And that's well, not 30 hours a week, 30 hours throughout the semester. 30 hours a week would have been insane. But ultimately, it's like, am I really helping? And everybody else has all these problems that they're going through. And, you talked about somebody who may not be making as much money. You need to help them too. You can't just take and take and take and give a subpar performance or give something that really doesn't help them. So yeah, I think you're right on the ball there. It just is very, very poor business, very poor human connection. It just isn't good if you just want and don't give.
Well, yeah, it just doesn't work very well. Even if you're, some people might say, well, Wade's preaching morality. No, even if you don't care, it still works to help people realize that they've gotten value from you. And specifically, and I know a very small amount about Twitch, but I know in general there are certain platforms. For example, if you're building a podcast or if you're building a YouTube channel, both of those ultimately can be assets. Now, of course, if your content's horrible, that's not an asset. But if assuming your content's pretty good, or even somewhat good, or at least trending in the right direction, then you're building an asset that's going to be there years and years and years to come. And one of the tough things with, for example, building a following on, let's say, Instagram, or in fact, let's even use Snapchat as a better example. Snapchat was really, really, really hot. Now it's not. And then it's kind of making a comeback. TikTok dancing, yes, maybe it is, maybe it's not. Those are more, again, you can in a short time perhaps get a lot of influence. There's nothing wrong with those. But certainly for people who are in college or in their early 20s, build up your LinkedIn profile. Yes. And by the way, I'm a Gen Xer. This is kind of what some of us look like. We're not the same as the baby boomers, and there's nothing wrong with baby boomers. We have a different view of the world. We were the first generation to tell the world, F you. We like to do things our own way. We think we're cool. We think we're hip. But at the end of the day, we're looking for clarity. So yes, we're still on Facebook, and on Facebook, we want to see photos of our friends and our family. We don't want a lot of business on there. But on LinkedIn, pitch us all day long, because we know what we've jumped in for. For us, there's not that blurred lines. And again, I'm obviously one part of that generation, but there's not a lot of blurred lines. For us, like Instagram is still kind of, for some of us are on it, some of us are not. Some of us like, okay, lots of pictures of people who, so that one friend from high school that still keeps showing 50 selfies of themselves. You're like, okay, I hope they find their happiness. And it's probably not somewhere in a selfie. But there's certain things, a LinkedIn following, for example, or even your LinkedIn profile, that's legitimate. It's not easy. Instagram, you can fake it. LinkedIn, that's you, that's your photo, that's people who know you. So a lot of this is about simultaneously, yes, maybe working on the Twitch or the Snapchat or the TikTok or whatever's the latest thing, but underneath that, having an email list of people that you're building, because that's your asset, your data, the people you can contact no matter how the platforms change. And then yes, your YouTube and your podcast, that people start realizing, wow, this person's been doing this all these years, and what seems like something that's not an asset to say, oh my gosh, look at what a dork I looked like 10 years ago. People say, dude's been doing this for 10 years. And they might not watch any of those episodes. But if you think about it, if over the years, each week or each month, you've put out a good episode, and then so I know, for example, when people look to do business with me, they'll look at my LinkedIn profile and say, okay, Wade's got over 2,000 whatever connections. He's posting, he has videos on here, he's going live on here. He's got a podcast. It's got 70 whatever episodes. He's got okay, he's a serious business person. And that's the main filter. Anything beyond that is going to come down to, will they sit down and talk with me? And then we can get into, some people call them strategy sessions or discovery calls or whatever. But that's the filter. And if I'm hiring somebody, I'm looking at their LinkedIn profile. What do they have there? And this is perhaps even very specific advice to people that are coming out of college or looking for jobs. It's, okay, let me go slightly different direction, but very, very micro or very specific. So I've grown up in the insurance industry. My father's a State Farm agent. I've grown up in that world. State Farm's an awesome company. That's the corporation I referred to that I used to work with, and I still help a lot of their insurance agency owners. We just had somebody that we hired at one of the agencies I work with. She was in the fashion industry, in the sense of she was one of those people that would supervise the people at the mall that do the selling of makeup and whatnot. And since COVID's really taken a lot of the traffic, she's, okay, I got to do something else. She went out and she got an auto and home insurance license to sell that in the state that she's in. And she applied for the position. The initiative to simply say, look, I'm not waiting, because everybody else is like, well, will you hire me? And will you pay for my license? The license cost a few $100. I'm not saying that's nothing, but that's not a crazy investment. To pass the test took her probably 2 months. So 2 months and a few $100, and all of a sudden, she's a prime candidate for a job because she's not leaning on, well, see, I've got a university degree, and so therefore you've got to pay me $50,000 a year. No, I don't. I mean, it's great you got a university degree. I went to university. So then it's up to you then to connect. But more than that, she came in with, again, how can I serve in this business model? I'm reducing your training timeline. I'm already coming in with a license. I'm already serious. Boom, literally top of the resume list. If we didn't hire, somebody else would have. And so those are the sort of things where, again, despite all the stuff, and if it feels fluffy on any social media platform, it's probably fluffy. What you're doing right now is not fluffy. This is work. And if people don't know, getting the audio quality right, buying the material, booking the time, scheduling the time, there's work involved. It might not be might not be brain surgery, but it's work and it's a commitment and there's consistency to it. So when you're willing to do that, that shows up. And again, building those assets, LinkedIn, YouTube, and soon it'll be something else than YouTube, but you'll still have your videos. So even if the platform changes, if you can move them, great. But if it's something that disappears after 24 hours, like, well, there just went all my work and all the proof that I'm working. Again, it might be a short-term thing, but overall, I want that archive. I want that, oh yeah, here's all the stuff Wade's done. And so again, I'm really excited to watch what you're going to be doing.
Oh, thank you.
And the people that are following you.
Yeah, it's been a neat journey. I think this will probably be episode number 70-ish as well. And, I've tried a lot of different things, and sometimes you stumble into great things. Sometimes you stumble into not so great things, but you just keep moving forward anyway. So it's been great. I really appreciate your feedback and thoughts. Absolutely.
And just to be clear, and so this is something some people will get this and some people this will sound weird, but so if you've not had the experience, it's interesting when you've both been a fanboy and then been fanboyed, if that makes sense. So most of us are used to being a fanboy. There's a band, an athlete, somebody that we're like, wow, if we met them, and maybe we haven't met them, but we're like, wow, that person's awesome. But then when you realize that there's other people that are looking at your work right now, Dallin, there are people who are watching your stuff and like, wow, I wish I could do that. And to your point, that's your audience, or at least that's one of your audiences. It doesn't have to be that Dallin is the greatest guy ever to do a podcast ever. No, there's a group of people, to a first grader, the third graders are so cool and they can learn. And if the third graders are actually looking to teach them something, they could teach them something. So I think that's one of the best lessons I've learned over the years that it's taken so while for it to hit, because again, all this comparison, one of the worst things you can do as an entrepreneur, and one of the worst things you can do for your self-esteem is to compare yourself with other people. Because they're not always showing you what's going on behind the scenes. So some of the people that look insta gorgeous, some of them are healthy and doing healthy things to get their body or whatever. Some of them are not, and you don't know that. But overall, you just do your thing, you do your work, and I think what you're going to find, and those of you, and I don't know what you have set up, but for those of y'all who are looking to do what Dallin's doing, reach out to him. Because my guess is in some form, in some way he can help you in a free way, in some way maybe he can mentor you or different things. But that's also, if you're listening, that's how you figure out what you're offering to people. Because some people say, oh, I'd like this level of support. And you say, oh, I've got an ebook that does that. Great. I can give that to you for your email address, or I can just, it's $10, or hey, here, you're a friend of mine. Great. Because also with your friends, it can kind of feel weird to say, I'll only give you this if it's $10, especially if it's a digital thing like this. At least it'd be like, okay, well, Wade, you paid for that. But even then, it's like, no, here's a book. That's how you give stuff. And it's. But overall, then when someone says, oh no, I need this. I've got this huge thing. You say, okay, well, let's talk about that. My normal rate is blah. About how many hours would it take to do this? And okay, I think it's going to take 10. I'd like to budget 12 because I want to make sure I do it really well. And I want to be able to fully focus on this. Okay, let's set a good time. Like, that's how a business starts. It's that simple. It can be very lemonade standish in a good way. Like, oh, you want lemonade? Oh, next time you want me to bring cookies. Okay. Oh, what do you pay for cookies? Which cookies you kind of like? Oh, you like that? Okay, great. Next time I'll be back with cookies. It really can be that simple if you don't have all of your bills due next week. That's why the situation that you're in is so awesome to start. If a person or high school or any situation where they're getting any sort of financial support from parents or not. And I don't know if you are or not, but some are, some aren't. And then if you're working, again, there's that balance. But overall, I'm 49. I still have my core business. And this right now, 4-day work week, that's one of my side hustles. It's not yet making a lot of money for me, but I am helping a lot of people. And maybe someday it will, maybe someday it won't. But again, I might have drawn it up differently, but for some reason, definitionally, income-wise, I'm a software guy who's able to afford to work 4 days a week and help people. And so I just keep playing this game and moving around with it and having fun with it. And maybe in some ways I could be a little more intentional, but I try not to white knuckle it. Life's been good, so I just kind of try to enjoy the journey.
Yeah, I think you got to do that and just be thankful for the lessons you're learning. Like whenever I have a really rough day, I've had some rough days this semester. I'm like, well, shoot, let's get a piece of paper out and be like, all right, well, what happened? Okay, I woke up at 7:30, and what did I do? Okay, I was on my phone a little bit, and I didn't do my scripture study, or I didn't do whatever. And you can like do that to find trends of things that are going wrong, or you can also do that, find things that are going right. It's like, oh, I meditated this day for 10 minutes, and that helped me get so much more work done. Sweet. Or running in the morning works much better than the afternoon, or et cetera. Really, really can change the whole ball game when you can dissect it. What's some quick tips here at the end that would help people with their overall productivity and getting the most out of each workday?
Just do one thing a day, one new thing, and find what's that one big thing. If you could only get one new thing. Now, I'm not saying that's one new thing. So you say, Wade told me not to brush my teeth. No, I didn't say don't brush your teeth. There's certain things that are autopilot. Hopefully brushing your teeth is one of them. But what's that one new thing? And in my experience, you do it early in the morning. That's when you have the most energy. Now, there are some people that might be something that's more unique to the person, because some people say, Wade, I get my energy burst at 10 p.m. at night. Okay. But whenever that time is, for a lot of people, it's early in the morning, especially if you're in college and there's other social opportunities that could come up later in the evening where you say, oh yeah, I was going to do it at 10, but then, had this chance to go somewhere. But overall, just one thing. And if best, for 2021, have one main thing you want to achieve that you've not achieved. Because when you have the shorter perspective, one thing doesn't seem like a lot. I've been an entrepreneur for over 20 years now. And there's certain things, had I been more intentional, I could have gotten a lot more done. And this is not me regretting it. This is just me noticing, because I had 5 things I wanted to get done. So what, those 5 things got 20% of my energy, or maybe halfway through the year, like you said, another email came in. I saw another course creator or another guru, and they might be good. So this is not a knock on them, but then some of my attention got diverted. And so now instead of 100% of my attention going into one new thing, and technically it's, 100% of my sort of time budget for new things going into one thing, or let's say your side hustle. If you got 5 hours a week for your side hustle, I want all those 5 hours at least going into one theme or as quickly as possible, because otherwise you're just going to have a lot of mediocre side hustles or mediocre things. And all that being said, that's work. Play, yes, I know how to play basketball, volleyball, soccer, this, that, and I chose to specialize in one. So that's, to me, the balance part where I think it's great. totally let your natural curiosity lead you where it wants to go. But once you start saying, I really want to make an impact and I really want to make money, and the impact comes first. The impact always comes first. Even if you don't see it, people don't give you money just for no reason, unless you're just really fortunate, or they'll do it once. But a business that's ongoing, you're going to make some sort of impact first. And that's where you see, how can I, with a podcast, how can I filter out people that are not the right people and attract the people who are the right people without it costing me any additional time? I did the interview, I did the podcast interview once, or I did a solo episode once, or I made a course once, but just doing that, but one thing, just one thing, or even at the very least, one thing a month. And if you can do that, then you look back next month and say, I did that, or usually it'll be, I did that about 80% right. And this month I'm either going to finish that 20%, or I'm going to say that's good enough and I'm going to do something new. Just once, one thing at a time.
Yeah, it's so extremely simple, but it's so easy to just, okay, I did that one thing really well. Let's just throw another thing on, just a tiny little thing. And all of a sudden your focus is more towards one thing than the other thing. I know I tried learning to make video game music early in 2020, and that went well for a little bit. But then with doing podcasting and these other things, it just didn't make sense anymore. And so now I'm planning to maybe try that again in like September of next year and just go all in on it after I have these other things already in play. But yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. And I guess going back to basketball again, because why not? You need to be able to basically dribble and go pretty quickly. And then you can get your spin moves between the legs, around the back, everything like that. Those kind of passes, those tricky moves, but you get the basics down, brushing your teeth, waking up, combing your hair, and showering, and then you can add on, meditation or other things, and it'll be kind of this natural process. And I think you're a good example of enjoying and loving that process, including time for play. And I think that's something I need to get a little bit better at. Is I feel like there's this kind of thing for me, it's like ploric, which is like playing while you're working or something. It's like not even a real thing. And so I need to be more all in on work, all in on play. But yeah, how can the listeners find you? I think we already talked a little bit about that, but yeah, give us that little spiel.
Sure. They can find me at 4dayworkweek.com, the number 4dayworkweek.com. That's everything. And then if they want to get started in a community that's supporting people creating a balanced lifestyle, it doesn't have to be 4-day work week, but work-life harmony, enjoying life, enjoying work, you can go to 4dayclub.com and you can get a membership there and get started for free. And in fact, for your audience, if you want, what I'll do is if you go to apprentice.4dayclub.com, you can get the first course that's in there. That normally there's a fee for that, but your people can get that and get started with that. And it's all about just enjoying, balancing your time, your relationships, your money, your things, and just making sure you're having fun outside of work. Because if you're not having fun outside of work, you're not going to want to create more time. But if you are, you're going to be much more likely to do that. And just like you said, enjoy the ride.
Yeah, well, that's super awesome. I'm definitely going to dive into that. I don't know who else is going to, but I'm definitely going to dive into and take advantage of that. So thank you for that and that special offer. And I just appreciate you and what you're doing. And we'll definitely keep in touch.
Thank you so much for having me out, Dallin.
Yeah, for sure. Take care.